What we're going to do here, I have some questions that are of interest to me and I hope have a broader interest, but I wanted to first ask you to just talk about yourself. And your background is so fascinating in the sense that she started out at 18, 17, you began to get into movies or television?
No, I wanted to start out. I got one of my first offers at 17,
yeah,
and
okay.
I was told to go home and sit quietly and not make a fuss. Because I come from a very conservative area and I came from a political family.
Right.
Even though I had a European mother, but who had also become quite conservative.
Oh, okay.
So I kept quiet, and then I got more offers. Then I got into an arranged marriage when I was 18. I ran away from home when I was 19 and decided to become an actress.
Well, the plot thickens then, okay.
Yes, my act of rebellion.
Right.
So...
Where did you... I read somewhere that you were the first Pakistani actress to make a Bollywood movie. Is that correct?
I was the first Pakistani actress to play a lead character in a Pakistani movie and go across at that time. Because the government tried very hard to ban me, but because I had dual nationality, they couldn't really ban me.
And you had dual nationality?
I have a British passport because of my mother. Okay. So I was working on the basis of that. I got my work permit, and they kept trying to ban me, but they couldn't ban me. And for 2 years, while the film was being made, I was grilled in the press pretty much, but I had to be very careful of what I was doing because India and Pakistan have always had very tense relations. So I had to be very careful of every scene. I had to analyze everything a dozen times because my father was a politician back home. And but I knew what I was doing. I was fairly confident of the people I was working with and the script I was working on. And eventually when the film came out, it did very well. So things fell into place.
But you went from that to becoming a producer and director and writer after you finished acting, or?
No. Actually, when I was about 19 and I hadn't got a chance to act, I hadn't been gotten allowed to act yet.
Oh, okay.
Because I have brothers who live here in Wisconsin. So when my parents wanted me to keep quiet, I was sent to Wisconsin for 6 months. Where it was a place to make a person sort of sort themselves out. So when I was there for those 6 months, I wrote a script, which was based on the immigrants, the Pakistani immigrants, and how the second generation settled down to here. And the differences between the way Pakistan was emerging, because with immigrants who have come here in the 70s, they kind of live in a bubble that is still the 70s. Pakistan has progressed very much, become much more modern, sort of grown in many areas. So I wrote about this family that was living both sides, in which one brother was here and one was there. And when I went back, I took it to a producer on television. He said, "Oh my God, what have you written? And you showing women smoking cigarettes." I said, "Well, they smoke drugs as well." He said, "No, we don't show these things on TV." I said, "But they happen every day." So he said, No. You act and you be the heroine in my next play." So I kind of negotiated with him and he agreed to let me write part of the play. That's when I got to do my first play on television. And after that I got this Indian movie, which was offered to me, and then I went to India. So I always wanted to write. I wanted to create the story. I was never very passionate about acting. It's something I stumbled into. It was happening, so I thought might as well see what it's about. And then I did 5 or 6 more films in India until I was thoroughly bored of Bollywood. Because 24 years after acting, I think I've been doing the same role for 24 years. And this year I've decided I can't act anymore. I can't play the suppressed, good, sacrificing Eastern woman. Because I really don't like her, and I think she's a wimp. So then I went on some years later to establish my own production house because I'd written I wanted to make things and I thought that was the only way to do it with television. I attempted to make a film, but because the film industry had been killed by the military dictators we had and by the Taliban and the Russian war and things that had started coming in the late 70s and 80s, the film industry had died. So I tried to make a film, but I made it, but there were a lot of problems. Then I moved on to television, and I did quite a bit of work on television, because television, you can get away with more easily. You're covering more time duration, so you can deal with more social issues and get away with saying more, because the censors are not really going to watch every minute when you're doing about 16 or 17 hours.
Mm-hmm. Well, I copied down from somewhere a statement that you made, which I think encapsulates essentially where Zeba is, what her philosophy, her modus operandi is in terms of what she's pursuing. And it says this: I hope to be able to improve market standards of program content and approach the psychology of media in a manner that conveys positive, liberal, and sensitive messages to empower people, especially women, and provoke thought, infuse confidence, and develop initiative. And was it that kind of philosophical, programmatic, work-oriented perspective that led you to be selected as an Eisenhower Fellow? And can you tell us what the Eisenhower Fellowship is, which is why she's here in the first place, as an Eisenhower Fellow?
There's a friend of mine who's a fellow who is basically a technical person. He was setting up a television channel in Pakistan, one of the first satellite channels, in 2000. And I was introduced to him by a mutual friend. I mean, he was a very educated, very cultured person. Now, coming into the media world, for a person who's from a conservative, techie background, it's difficult. And then because, unfortunately, in our part of the world, it's misunderstood, and a lot of people who dominate the industry are not entirely honest. And he'd partnered with one person who was particularly dishonest. And I couldn't say it to him when I met him, but I knew it was a difficult situation. A year later, he washed his hands of the channel, but I stayed in touch with him because he had the same interests and views on the psychology of media and bringing social change through media. And we've been in touch since then. So he was the one who recommended me for Eisenhower, because he knew how I was thinking and what I was struggling with through my work, because I did work on social issues in the serials I made and whatever I did. And I did speak about them when I went to shows. But it's not enough, because with television, when you have 40 channels and so much going on all the time, you can't really make a change if you're doing like 1 or 2 soaps a year. You need much more. You need ripples to go out.
So you started your own production company.
I started my own. Okay, the Eisenhower Fellowship.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
I'll just.
Oh, continue then. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Eisenhower Fellowship was basically given to President Eisenhower on his, I don't remember which birthday, but very close to the end of his lifetime. And the purpose is to pick mid-career professionals who have done a considerable amount of work and who have worked for some sort of social change or towards change, and who also have a vision to improving the world at large and doing something good for their country. And they pick out these people, they bring them together. Once you're an Eisenhower, you're part of the alumni forever. So you're given a directory of fellows, and you can contact anyone. Like if I'm looking for a media person in Indonesia, I can find one through the network. And then they bring you over here, they network you with people in your area with your interests, and hope that you can facilitate for you to collaborate and work on bigger projects and make a bigger difference. So it's basically the end result is, and the hope is to make the world a better place by doing good work in whichever area it is.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, all right. Personal question. How did you hear about me?
I was obsessed with media of psychology, and I Googled and Googled and Googled and Googled, and you kept coming up.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
I thought that this is the person I have to go and find.
It's cost me a fortune for that, but
Well,
you do what you have to do. She was at a conference, a panel discussion recently about the where is the Pakistan film industry? Does it have to be revived or completely deconstructed and started all over again? And one of the things that she was talking about, or there was a couple of things that you were talking about. I'll talk about you because you're here. One of the things you were talking, well, two things you were talking about was one that Pakistanis only seem to be going to Bollywood movies.
it's the same language, it's good entertainment, it's
Right.
colorful, and it's fun.
Right. And they don't go to Lollywood movies.
There are
What is
a lot of-
Lollywood? What is that? Is that just another riff on Hollywood? Is Bollywood, Lollywood, and Hollywood?
It's
Three pigs of film
a name that was given to the film industry that was, or should I say, the dregs of the film industry that was left in Lahore, which is now barely existent.
Okay, that's a city,
That's a city in Pakistan.
Lahore.
Yes, which had kind of taken over what little bits there were left of the film industry.
Uh-huh.
But
Do
I
you-
mean, no, not many people would see those films anyway, and they probably usually don't see the light of day if they are made.
Ah. Well, because that brings me to the next point, which is you made the point that the Pakistani film industry, such as it is, basically focuses upon what's wrong with Pakistan, or the unsatisfied. I'm not going to say darker side, but the depressed, deprived side of misery.
Misery.
Okay, and so do the Bollywood pictures offer more a better perspective, or more complicated, a more heterogeneous perspective about life and emotions and goals and good things that can happen? And Pakistan's essentially a depressed
No,
person?
no. Indians understand it much better. If you watch a handful of Bollywood movies and then you go to India, you'll be looking for those things, you will not see them. You don't see, they don't exist in reality. I lived in India for 5 years. The Bollywood movies exist in the studios and in the cinemas.
I mean, they don't dance in the street and break into street?
Instantaneous costume.
Very boring. And the 100 dancers aren't there behind them either. When that big moment happens, the violinists don't appear. It's very, very disappointing.
Really?
No, nothing happens. They're just like anybody else.
Well,
Probably a bit hotter and sweatier, but anyone else.
well, the question then is, do you see your work in the media, and now that you're a producer, less so an actor, but still a writer, do you see your work in media as moving toward an uplifting the spirit of the country and the people in the country, and offering different perspectives than the existing film industry, such as it is, does, but also something to help pull Pakistan more into the 21st century than it is?
Well, see, the problem is that our people and the film directors that we have look at Bollywood as the benchmark because the language is the same. They think the culture is similar. But it's not similar. That's why the country is separated. Now, existing film industry we don't have. We have a few government-funded films that come out that are propaganda, that are working on certain issues that the government once worked on. So those films say what the government once said, and that's it. There is no private. I mean, you call it democracy. We don't have a private sector industry. We have no support for films. Now we've started getting these little cineplexes, which are coming up and which are doing really well because people need entertainment. And if we are going to give people alternatives to this war on terror which is going on, and the religious militants and all the craziness, the only way I see us doing it is through film, because television does not have a focused attention of the audience. Film does, because you're shut in a dark room for 2.5 hours. with just these images coming on you. That's how Bollywood gets them, because it sells them so many dreams that every girl who comes out thinks that, oh my God, now I'm going to marry a guy like that. And every guy who comes out thinks that, okay, my future wife is going to be like that. And when she's not, it doesn't work out. So there's a lot of disappointment and heartbreak, but that's another story. That's another tragedy that you come across very often, because they think that, life is going to be a Bollywood movie.
Well, that sounds like America's Hollywood.
It ends in misery.
So does America's Hollywood.
On the contrary, in Pakistan, what I want is, okay, you need real cinema, and you need a positive message of hope coming out, because now the common man over there either sees the Taliban taking over, or they see the CIA taking over. They're just two extreme views, and that's what most discussions are about. And nobody wants the Taliban taking over, except the Taliban, and maybe their families don't either. Nobody wants the CIA taking over either, because after all the CIA movies we've seen, which is all that we have seen, or all that we've heard on the news, and after we've seen Guantanamo Bay, and so on, nobody wants them there either. So it's a very hopeless situation, because by now we would have had a revolution, but we don't have a leader. So we can't have a revolution. And the people who are in power really are not the government of Pakistan. There are a handful of private individuals who have their own personal interests, and that's it. So it's very unfortunate for the common man. Now, I feel that if I've come to a certain position, and I have a place in society, and I have a voice, it's only right that I use it responsibly, and I give a positive message to the public, which can give them a message of hope, and which can point them in a direction which could be positive for the country and for the social and cultural values.
But is it possible for you to do that without somebody shooting you in the head when they get on a bus?
See, I was asked this question a few days ago. But the thing is that every human being dies. When I've got to die, I've got to die. And I believe that it's predestined where I'm going to die and how I'm going to die. Does that mean that if I don't make these movies, I will not die? I'm still going to die, so I might as well do something, or at least try to do it. At least I know I've done it. It will make my dying worth it. I just die like that. That's cool. I don't want to die for nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want to die. When I die, I want there to be a good reason for it.
You want to live for something?
Yes, I want there to be a good reason for it when I die. I want a good fight. I love good fights, and I love fighting with forces bigger than myself.
Really?
Yes.
You're my role model.
No, I mean, I think that if it's a fight, it has to be with someone much bigger than you.
But do you think that your status as a movie actress and a well-considered movie actress would help you or protect you in some sense? You have a voice to speak out that is a celebrated voice. You're the voice of somebody, not nobody. Do you think that gives you the safety, the security, the magic blanket to do things that other people could not get so far in doing because of who they are, but because of who you are, you can take bigger risks, ask for more things, speak out more.
Create more nuisance value.
Right, well, okay.
Yes, I mean, I would take advantage of that, because, I mean, the means would justify the end, as long as I'm getting the message out to the public. But I would sugarcoat the message so much, because on two occasions, these two projects I've done, which have been religiously very sensitive and very controversial issues. One was honor killing. The other was in certain sections of Pakistan, the religious families, when they don't want the property to go out, when they want to keep the property from the sisters, they marry them to the Quran, which is very much like nuns, and that is nothing to do with Islam. But very powerful people have done that and do subscribe to those views, which are tribal. So I did a project on that, and I was told not to. But it was so sugar-coated. There were so many pretty girls in there and so many pretty things that it went right over their heads until the 20th episode. After it ran for 20 weeks, they suddenly realized what it was about. And that happened both times. The audience realized television channel didn't.
So they spoke subtextually to the audience.
No, it's
No.
just there. You see, they see it, they don't listen to it. That's the good thing about them.
About the people who run the studios.
The important people, the people who call the shots.
Right.
Because when they see pretty girls, they go like that. Or when they see cute guys.
I had told her about a book that I had read.
I'm still chasing it. I can't get it.
Well,
I ordered
I'll
from
loan you
Amazon.
mine if you'll send it back.
I'll Xerox copy it. And that's what I do with books. So, can I copy it?
It would cost you a fortune to do that.
Well, I ordered from
$1,000.
Amazon, and then they said they were out of stock, but there's another, I've tried to order.
I'll loan it to you, and then you can just send it back to me when you're through. She makes a point. What I have here, and I really think this is fascinating. I was lying in bed last night thinking about how today could get screwed up, and I jumped out of bed because this is what I have to do because my memory doesn't last long. So I jump out of bed and write things down, and then I go back to sleep, and that's fine. And so she had sent me. I had asked her to send me something about things that about the media and filmmaking and television programming, et cetera, that she struggles with in her capacity as an actress, a writer, and a director. Actress, writer, and producer. Actress, writer, yeah. And how would you disseminate messages through the media that maybe you could target some part of the population but not the other part? Because if the other part got it, then you would get it from them. And she, in the process of giving these questions, I thought, she was asking me, as a media psychologist, what are my thoughts on it? And these are very, very fascinating questions. And my thought is that wouldn't it be terrific if rather than just getting my point of view, she could get your points of view, particularly students, but also enlightened faculty members and things like that. If you guys could take, I'm going to hand this out, take questions. I think there are 10 questions here. And they're all about different aspects of film and how any media product is effective and affects people who consume the media. And one of the points she makes is that it's not unusual to see a lot of violence and gory sights on the news. And the general reaction that Americans might have to that question is, well, yes, that's a serious problem, because when you program and show violence, particularly real violence, because the research on media and violence is pretty consistent in showing that the more realistic media violence becomes, the less entertaining it is. So news programs now have this kind of 8-second delay, 15-second delay if there's going to be a suicide on a Los Angeles bridge. And Los Angeles is famous for doing all these police helicopter shots and newscopters who are following people who are going to do reckless things, that they don't want to make the mistake of actually catching a guy committing suicide on camera. And Fox News does it all the time. So there's something about Fox News' penchant for catching people committing suicide, which might be a political statement. But they do these kinds of things. Her question was, when she mentioned this thing, was how can you role model a superhero for your culture, so that instead of being either depressed or excited by violence, you find somebody who represents a more positive approach to dealing with crime and the political
violence. Because when a bomb explodes, the cameras turn up at the sides, and whoever can get more footage gets a bonus from the channel. So you see all kinds of things.
In America, that's called if it bleeds, it leads. So that's how institutionalized it is.
Yes, it's, that channel is showing that 20 people have been killed. That one's showing 27 have been killed. So this has to be a better channel.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the color of the people being killed, right? Because 2 white people being killed
That's
gets
huge.
much more coverage than
You got it.
hundreds of-
You understand.
Well, then, and in a class society like Pakistan or India, caste class society, is it more interesting to see somebody from the higher classes get killed or lower classes?
No, the lower classes are just numbers.
Numbers. Okay.
They're numbers.
So it's the same
but
thing.
The higher classes are names.
Right.
But the religious sects are always assassinating each other's people, and so are the political parties.
Okay.
They knock off each other's people regularly.
So one of the questions she asked is, how do you make a superhero? What can you do if you were creating a role model? How do you create a role model that you're going to show on television for everyman, which might be able to give a message that would turn people around in terms of
Like the $6
their
million
appetite?
man, like James Bond, like Superman, like Batman. Batman trying to save Gotham from crime.
Right.
I mean, how do you create a hero like that for them when they're so desensitized?
And so that if you're meaning that if somebody, because it's not a very difficult thing to do to create a superhero, right? It's really not hard. Anybody in this room could do that graphic comic and then translate that
No,
into a
but
movie.
it has to socially be acceptable for those people so
Right.
that they accept the hero. They start idealizing the hero, and then they start adopting his habits and his behavior and his values.
So they have to identify with him.
They have to identify.
Or her. Can she do it? Could a hero?
I think the
could a
Powerpuff
heroine do
Girls
it?
would be great for women's empowerment, but we have them there. I mean, it could be a she, but then the guys are not going to. Then we'd have to do 2. We have to do 2,
Male and a female.
a male and a female.
So the guys could not identify with the female
No
hero.
way.
No, because I'm interested because I always identified with Wonder Woman when I was a kid. I mean, I also identified with Superman, but I always found Wonder Woman a particularly charming person. I was much more willing to follow her down the road than Superman.
But those were for other reasons, not because.
No. Not true. No, it was not. Come on, I was 7 years old. I was not sexualized about Wonder Woman.
No, it's like Xena. Xena is a great model.
Yeah,
Xena is a great role model.
right.
Dora is a great role model.
Dora the
Dora the
Explorer?
Explorer.
I don't watch her.
I don't either, but I have the gist of it.
Yeah.
Like the Powerpuff Girls are a great example for women's empowerment.
Yes.
But little girls would see that. What about older women, or at least women teenagers? They're not going to associate with the Powerpuff Girls.
They don't.
I don't think so.
What about those girls in Russia? What about them?
Pussy Riot.
Pussy Riot? You think they'll become role models of some sort?
We'd have to make our own because
Yeah, they're they're worldwide right now.
Well, they're well known, but are they role models? That's the question. And then what? And then
What do you mean by role model?
somebody who you identify with and want to be like, or model yourself after.
idealize.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have lots. We're starting to open it up. We don't have just the Superman archetype,
No.
which is really a bad one. We have to have that's why we have these bad people like Walter White, these anti-heroes, because we have to see that there's a lot of range here in these.
Right.
We've got all the bad ones. We need the good ones now. We've got the bad ones. We don't need them.
Well, but the people like Walter White, we're being forced to identify with them and want them to succeed, and then while they're succeeding, we're going, oh my God, this guy isn't such a great guy. Like what he's doing is really, he's a methamphetamine maker. Like that's a bad thing. Like now we're confused, and everybody who's watching it is in this dilemma of like going for some hero and then going, oh my God, he's not Malcolm in the Middle anymore.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting point. Yeah. With-
So I
It is
just
interesting.
wonder if, I'm sorry I walked in late, but because of the superhero, it's an interesting thing. Like actually in the United States, there's this kind of a club. It's a social club that's all over the country called the Real Life Superhero. And you'd be interested in this. And there's actually a fellow nearby he lives in this town, and he's made up a costume for himself, and he has a whole kind of ideological platform, and he tries to actually be, I guess, a mentor of some younger people in this way. So this kind of idea, I think that you're interested in. But I was thinking that the superhero is another kind of form of extremity, and I think that, I forgot your name, but you were kind of getting after that too.
Yeah.
Is this sort of an extreme? And I think that I just wonder if there aren't already many, many, many people who are actually really heroic models, not on this like cartoon level, but are really out there, but they do not get any kind of attention in the news, except for maybe once in a while in the Carpenter Foundation grant. They do not get attention. They do because they're not sexy in that kind of way. And so I think I wonder if you would like, if you could address that, like people who are actually doing really amazing work that's inspiring people, but they're only known in their town or in their region.
See, that is something that maybe a maturer person would appreciate, but someone who's not that mature, and especially an audience that's not that mature, in an underdeveloped country, one would need to be a little more glamorous about it. And then, see, the thing is, how many kids love Superman and Batman more than Gandhi and Buddha? I mean, Gandhi and Buddha are huge real-life examples, but kids love Superman and Batman.
The interesting part about her asking the question, and Americans talk about superheroes all the time. That's not, it's like falling off a, what do you fall off? You fall off a wagon or something like that.
Long.
But if your charge is to write or create a superhero, or look into researching the project of a superhero, not in America, but in another culture.
Which is underdeveloped, which is
An
probably
underdeveloped culture.
America in the 20s. Maybe where America was in the 20s, if you can visualize it. Yeah.
In Prohibition.
Yes.
Then you have to learn about that culture. And you have to understand what their values are, their sensitivities are. So if you come, because there are a lot of members of I'm in the Writers Guild, and there are a lot of Writers Guild members who get called upon to go to Europe, go to Germany, go to Japan, go to all these different countries to write or direct them in their television programming or filmmaking or what have you, because America is seen as some kind of standard. Even though everybody criticizes American films and the export of our garbage to other cultures and things like that, the truth of the matter is every other country wants to be like America's Hollywood industry. And that's the real truth of it all. You find British television, European television, the film companies all over the world becoming more like America, because America succeeds, doesn't succeed in war anymore, it succeeds in making movies and making television programming.
And it's really insidious, the national programming at a psychological level.
You're absolutely
It
correct.
is.
I don't want to get lost in that, because we all can amen on that. The point is that you got a problem here in terms of, if you're going to write for these cultures, you have to know about them. And the thing that she presents all sorts of difficulties for writers, American writers. How the hell would I make up a superhero that's going to make sense in this province or in this state or what have you, with people who are living in a feudal system? In 2012, they're living in a different century. How do you make heroes for that? And so there's no quick answer. You've got to research it. You've got to maybe go there and immerse yourself in it and find out what appeals to people at which ages. And
you can't talk about Islam from the outside. You have to be inside of it to really...
You cannot talk about Islam in Pakistan.
Right.
That's a very bad idea.
Absolutely.
But it's not just Islam, but feudal societies have their own set of values that they conveniently pass off as religious, which are not religious, like honor killing. And like brides given in blood, which is a tradition that happens in villages. Like if two tribes have had a fight, and one tribe has killed some person of the others, then to reconcile, they would marry between 1 and 12 women from their family to guys in that family to reconcile. And those girls would be considered given in blood. I mean, I have a friend who has. But it's something done. Not in the cities, but in the rural cultures.
But there is something fascinating about talking about the tenacity of a problem, how many times do we see people coming from other cultures which come to a different country completely and still engage in honor killing? How embedded does that have to be in the viscera?
In what killing?
Honor killing. Honor killing, killing their daughters, killing their sons, you know, mostly it's females they kill.
They don't kill the sons.
So they come to a completely different country, and they don't have that kind of, they're closed off to the membrane of transference of values and what have you, and these people continue to, now quite stunned when we arrest them and put them in prison. And yet they're not getting it. So that's how entrenched those kinds of belief systems are. And how do you develop characters or plots or storylines or heroes to break through that?
So that eventually at least the next generation will not be doing those things. Because this generation is ruined. I mean, I don't really hope to have much of an effect on them. At least the ones who subscribe to those values. But the next generation has to be given a better mindset. And the only way it can be given is through media.
Now, all of the communications people in this room teach the effects of media in one way or another. You know, how often do you, if you are gay or lesbian, and you were invisible on television for years and years and years, and then suddenly it happens, and how long did it take for that presence of gays and lesbians on television to change the country's value system so that it began to really seriously consider the acceptability of marriage in the gays in these alternative sexual lifestyle communities? It took a long time, but it happened. And without all these characters' presence on television and in the film and films, it probably wouldn't have happened. Because most people hang around people who share their same points of view. So you tend to be rewarded and reinforced to believe those kinds of things. There's been research done that people who live in the South and who supported racism in their communities, they move up north, they drop that completely. They just change it. It's gone. It's not entirely gone. It's always there residually, but it's gone. But it shows the power of what the atmosphere is that you're living in, and how these things can change social values and attitudes and things like that. And so that's what you're talking about in terms of
Yes.
what can I.
But now the strange thing is that maybe not so much in the cities, but in the rural areas, homosexuality is very accepted.
Okay.
I mean, it's absurd. It makes no sense, but it is. Because the extreme fundamentalists say, okay, fine, you're not with a woman, so it's okay. That's how they justify it, even though there's nothing of the sort. That's an Afghan byline.
But they can't get married, can they?
I mean, not that I know of.
Well, okay. So, but what you're saying is there are some values which are more strongly held in some countries than in other countries, and that's something you'd want to know. I mean, you could spend a lot of time assuming that you can project all of America onto every other country, and you find out that you can't do that.
My name is Irfan, and I'm just sorry, I'm not responding to this question. I'm saying your question of superhero is very interesting to me. I'm from Peshawar, which is considered a relatively conservative area in Pakistan. Some 3 years ago, we tried to create a hero, not a superhero. We went to Swat, which was a militancy-hit area. I personally went there. I made a documentary for class dismissed in Swat Valley on a child. She was the only one ready to speak for education against the militants who banned education in that area. Went there, took risks, shot that documentary when it was released. Following that, when she became a superhero because she was given awards on international level, not because of that documentary, because of her own efforts later on, but now 2-3 weeks ago she was shot. And now we are living with this guilt that when you are trying to create a superhero, in which society you are trying to create a superhero? You are making vulnerable the people to more risk in that way. So the next question comes, when you are asking that, are you able to create a superhero? The next question comes, in which society, where and with which risk, in fact. Now you're making people vulnerable to all these risks today, with which we are living here with this guilt that probably we had worked on this child. We created her in a way so that she could be more vulnerable to the militants in that way, and she was shot. So instead of her, whether we should be shot or was that justified with that? So this is a question which I would also be asking you, that are you able to take a risk into that society, or you are going with that to create some model, but in the 20th episode of that, you are saying that this was my past.
No, what I am doing is, it's totally fictional. It would be like a series, like a film, maybe not in a Batman costume, but a character like that who is fictitious, which is being played by an actor. I would not put a real person at risk because I know how much the risks are. I mean, there may be real people in society who one would draw the character from. But our society needs role models. We don't have role models. We don't have role models at all. I mean, when a teenager is growing up, who do you look at? Who do you idealize? James Bond, Batman, Tom Cruise from Mission Impossible, Shah Rukh Khan. I mean, where do you go? Because these are not our people. You can't be that. So you end up in this very half-cooked kind of limbo. We have to create the role models because that's the only way they can get the values, the awareness, the education, and change mindsets eventually through those characters.
I think with the idea of creating a superhero, first of all, you need to look inwards. Look at the society you're creating a superhero from or for. I believe that society has fables and folklores.
Yes.
First of all, those folklores and fables either have didactic morals attached to them that children learn from the beginning and they grew up with. If you want to create a character, look at those folklores, and there is either one or two heroes you could pick from there. It's either a negative one, and you bring in some positive values to it, and that's really going to catch attention because this is not what we're used to, and now it's different. But again, people are going to pick some morals from it, and because it's going into the next generation, children growing up will see that morals in that character, that icon you've created, and grow with it. They will run with it. So first of all, I think you should consider the fables, the folklores you have, because those are what people are used to. They already know that,
Yes.
and work around them.
Yes, I'm from Turkey, and we have a similar problem with superheroes. The media tried to create a superhero for some time, which was more European or American or Western in general, and the ratings were very low, and no one really paid attention to them. In the last few years, they created a TV series, which has been very popular, and it has been iconized. It is about a police officer, a detective, who investigates murders, but he is not a very clean and, classical police officer that you can see. He is more of a street person. He has a little beard and mustache, and he smokes all the time, and people, I think, could identify with him more in terms of what they see in reality and what they know to be fiction. So I think that sort of helped to create it. But some people said that this was not a good role model for people because he smoked all the time and he would,
But no one's going to be perfect. It was probably a much more realistic role model because there has to be the weaker side, or there has to be a failing, like the Achilles heel. You have to have a weakness for a hero.
Yes, and people argue that that was what drew them near to this character. So
Yes, because he's real. A character with a flaw will always be real. A perfect character, no one can associate with.